What's the first thing you think about when someone says they live in Springfield? I'm Jason, and this is Jason's Easy English, a podcast that helps you improve your English and learn about American culture in clear, understandable episodes in everyday language. Today we're talking about the name Springfield. Many people around the world immediately think of The Simpsons, but Springfield is much more than a cartoon reference. It's a very common, real city name in the United States, and it tells us a lot about how American places get their names. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy this episode, please be sure to follow or subscribe to my podcast. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First, yes, Springfield really is everywhere in the United States. I grew up in Springfield, Oregon, and now I live in Springfield, Missouri. And honestly, that's not strange at all. There are Springfields in many different states, from the West Coast to the Midwest to the East Coast. But when I tell someone from another country where I live, many people immediately think of Homer, Marge, Bart, and Lisa. They say things like, "Oh, you live in the Simpsons city." And that's when I usually say, "Hold on, I think you're a little mixed up," which means confused or not sure about something. I explain that the U.S. has many Springfields, not just the one on TV. Now, the cartoon Springfield is a joke on purpose. The creators never say which state it's in. They want viewers to imagine it could be anywhere. And that idea works because Springfield is one of the most common town names in the country. But why is it so common? One big reason is early American history. When settlers moved across the country, they chose simple, friendly, familiar names for new towns. Now, the word settlers means people who move to a new place, to build a new community. It's like colonizadores, or in Spanish, colonos. So let's talk about Springfield. A spring is a natural water source, like in Portuguese, uma nascente, or in Spanish, un manantial. And field is open land, campo. So Springfield literally means Campo da Nascente in Portuguese, or in Spanish, Campo del Manantial. And that sounded peaceful and familiar to those first settlers. Another important reason is how place names work in the United States. Each state has the power, the authority, to name its cities and towns. States do not have to coordinate with each other. So one state can have a Springfield, and another state can also have a Springfield. Because the country is large and the states work independently, names repeat everywhere. The same thing happens with towns called Madison, Centerville, Franklin, Georgetown, and Washington. They're all over the place. And all over the place means in many different locations. En todo lugar, or en todas partes. And many of these names come from important historical figures. For example, Franklin comes from Benjamin Franklin. Of course, Washington comes from George Washington. Early Americans liked naming towns after people they admired. Sometimes students ask me how I know all this, and I like to double-check the information with online sources. The phrasal verb double check means to confirm something or to make sure it is correct. If you double check Springfield, USA, you'll see many different towns with that name. Now, let me point out something interesting here. The phrase to point out means to explain or show something important, right? In Portuguese, it's destacar, or in Spanish, señalar. I often point out that repeated names aren't a mistake. They're part of how the U.S. developed. Settlers traveled, built new towns, and reused names that felt familiar or meaningful to them. Now, here's a fun fact. And remember, a fun fact is a short, interesting detail. So in Portuguese, it would be something like uma curiosidade, or in Spanish, un dato curioso. So here's a fun fact. Springfield, Massachusetts has a connection to early stories about witchcraft in the 1600s, even before the famous Salem witch trials. Another fun fact, Springfield, Illinois is famous for being the home of President Abraham Lincoln. So many people visit his house and museum in Springfield, Illinois. And finally, there's Springfield, Missouri, where I now live. It's sometimes called the Queen City of the Ozarks because it's the biggest city in the Ozarks region. All of these examples show something important. When a name sticks, it stays popular or continues for a long time. So to stick means to ficar, right? Permanecer in Spanish. And names like Springfield, Franklin, Centerville, Madison definitely stick. Have you ever seen repeated city names in your own country? Many students, after thinking about it for a minute, say yes. Sometimes it's because of religion, maybe the name of a saint, like Santo Antonio. Sometimes geography, sometimes history. In the United States, it's a mix of history and the fact that states choose names independently. All right, I hope that explanation was interesting and understandable. Before I let you go, let's review the main points of today's podcast. Today we learned that Springfield isn't only a Simpsons reference. It's one of the most common town names in the United States. Early settlers liked simple names like Springfield, and states named their own cities and towns, so the same names appear in different states. We also talked about how names like Madison, Centerville, Georgetown, Franklin, and Washington are popular across the country, often because they honor important historical figures. And we looked at a few fun facts from Springfields in Massachusetts, Illinois, and Missouri. And there are many, many, many other Springfields in the United States. We learned some new vocabulary today, too. The phrase mixed up means confused or not sure about something. The word settlers, people who move to a new place and build a community. The verb to double check, which means to confirm something or make sure it's correct. Fun fact, a short, interesting detail like uma curiosidade, un dato curioso. To point out, the phrasal verb to point out, which means to explain or to show or indicate something important. The phrase all over the place, en todo lugar, en todas partes. And the verb to stick, to stay popular or to continue for a long time. So in Portuguese, ficar. In Spanish, quedarse o permanecer. So that's today's episode. I hope you were able to understand most of it and that you learned something new. Be sure to follow or subscribe to my podcast, and please share Jason's Easy English with friends who are also learning English. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.